This is Fishdom. It's a simple match 3 game of which there are thousands. And like most match 3 games, it has hundreds of levels just like this one, where your main goal is to line up 3 identical objects in a row. But in this one, every once in a while you unlock a mini game, a small bubble of gameplay that's totally different from the rest. For instance, in this mini game, you have to pick the right object to get rid of a shark. That's an example of exotic gameplay, that is gameplay that's different from the rest of the game. The designers of Fishdom probably put that mini game in there for the sake of novelty, or to use it as a special reward for the player. But if you're making a gamified training program, sometimes you have to put in exotic gameplay because your content demands it. In the last video, we looked at the systemic approach to designing a gamified training program. You design one system of gameplay and you reuse it for all the content in your course. This is efficient for you, but it also lets the learner go through all the content without having to learn completely new ways of playing each level. We also saw 3.5 ways of varying the system so that the repetition stays fresh. But sometimes there's one part of your content that's just not like any other. It doesn't fit the pattern that the rest of the content follows. And when that happens, you might have to make a different gameplay mechanic just to teach that one bit of content well. So that's when you need a bit of exotic gameplay. So let's look at how to optimize learning in that situation. And to do that, I've got an extreme example. I once had to build a simulation exercise for a medical procedure. This procedure had 32 different steps, each of which required a different skill. One step required the learner to measure the correct position on the patient's body. In another one, I'm showing them how to fill out paperwork correctly. And in yet another one, they have to learn to make an injection at the correct angle. 32 steps like that all over the place. So here there's really no way to come up with one set of mechanics for them to practice each of these very different skills. There's no way to systematize that. When this happens, you've got the reverse problem than you do with a systemic gameplay. With systemic gameplay, you have gameplay that's very repetitive and you find ways to vary things across levels. With exotic, everything's different all the time, so you don't have to look for variation. When your content's totally different from one part to the other, your challenge is going to be to build some connection between those totally different levels. So here I can't systematize what I'm teaching, but I can systematize how I'm teaching. In other words, I can keep the wrapper, the container around each step of the procedure similar. And when I say the wrapper, I'm not just talking about, the same interface colors and fonts. I'm talking about the teaching methods. See, in this simulation, what's constant is that we're always teaching the learner new things. And so we're going to have to invest in a very robust set of guidance systems. For example, we have the sub-steps that tell you where you are in each step. We have contextual bubbles that tell you exactly what to do next in interface language. Click this, drag that. There are visual guides, things are labeled, and the learner can consult reference images or videos to get a picture of the ideal way to go about it. None of this stuff is core interaction. It's not the stuff the user does, but it's what we can reuse. Here the learner is having to master a different procedure at each step, so we're careful to bring in as much familiarity as we can across levels. Another thing that you can systematize in a situation like this is your marking scheme. If you're using points, for example, you can quote-unquote mark each step out of a score of 3. That lets the learner compare their performance on skills that are very different. And finally, exotic gameplay like that by definition doesn't repeat. So if you want the learner to practice more, once they've been through every step once, you don't have any more stuff to give them to do. There are 32 steps in the procedure, no more. But you can give them new goals. Since what we've systematized is our guidance system, that's what we can vary. So maybe the first time the learner goes through this injection step, they have all the guidance. So here we're showing them how far off they are from the correct angle using this gauge. However, when they redo it at a higher level of difficulty, maybe we only tell them what the angle should be, but we take away the gauge. And finally, when they get to the hardest level, having done it a couple of times, we can challenge them to do it with no guidance at all. This means that if you have a keener who's completed the procedure, you can still give them new goals to achieve, new things to aim for, a reason to keep practicing and feel like they're progressing. Like I said, this is an extreme example of exotic design. Everything is different. And my restaurant example from last week is a pretty extreme example of systemic design. In real life, it's much more common to have 2 or 3 gameplay systems coexisting in the same course, one for each learning objective sometimes. And where you end up standing on this spectrum from one type of gameplay to 3 to 32 different types of gameplay isn't totally up to you, is it? I've said it before, if you're doing this gamification of training thing right, You're letting your content drive the mechanics you design. Therefore, you're not really always the one choosing to go systemic or exotic, your content is. So if your content ends up on the systemic end of the spectrum, apply the tactics from the last video to mix things up and keep things fresh through cycles of practice. If it's at the opposite end like we just saw, try to systematize what you can so that the learner has some familiarity at each totally different step. So happy designing, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.